Hey there, hunters, and welcome back again to the Gunners Guild. Today in Remnant 2, we're going to be continuing our coverage of builds I approve of, which means it doesn't involve exploits and bugs, and there's a chance of death. So we're going to be skirting that line super thin today as we discuss Havoc Form and two builds utilizing this recently buffed skill. Buffed mainly in that skills don't cost as much duration to use anymore, so you can actually use the Havoc Form quite a lot, which instantly made it go from okay to, yeah, this is kind of busted, but also because a lot of other stuff lost damage. So while Havoc Form has a slight bug right now with it where any hit's going to knock you out of Havoc Form, which is annoying, you can easily remedy that with some drugs for stagger resistance. Bosses will be dead pretty much by the time you're done anyway. So everyone is playing Havoc Form builds right now. It's easy to see why. It's safe, it requires no skill, and it does a lot of damage. So let's dive into two iterations of Havoc Form that are performing extremely well right now. To start, let's go with the traditional Tickle Fingers build of Havoc Form that relies on stacking cast speed to increase the Lightning Tendril's attack speed. For the archetypes for both of these builds, we're going to be using the Invoker Prime for the extra skill charge so we can get two uses of Havoc Form, and also provides us with skill and elemental damage, which is obviously what we're going to be doing with Tickle Fingers. Now, I'm using Way of Kuyula because I like the Thunderstorms, but you can use Lydusa as well for crit and crit damage. For the Archon, obviously we're running Havoc Form. For our trinkets, we're going to be not quite exactly max cast speed. I'm sitting at 105% increased cast speed because I believe there's a soft cap at 100%, and going for 125 doesn't seem to do much for us. Like, I tested it and you go from 2.1k DPS to 2.2 when, just using Tickle Fingers and stuff. So it's barely anything. So instead, I'm going to be focusing on damage. So for the neck, we're going to be using Jester's Bell, but we're not going to be using the Kinetic Cycle Stone. Feel free to use it if you want though, because I'm using Token of Favor, Burden the Gambler, and Braided Thorns right now for just, crit stacking and damage. And the last ring slot would be for Devoured Loop once that gets fixed, so we have this infinite Devoured Loop setup. But in the meantime, you can use, Kinetic Cycle Stone, or you can run Probability Core for damage. There's not too many sources of good scaling for elemental skills, so it's just mostly small additive bonuses, so crit kind of edges out everything in the long run, so it's either crit or, cast speed for the most part we want to scale here. For the relic, we're going to be using Profane Heart because Leech, and the relic fragments are going to be elemental damage, skill damage, and cast speed. So between Flashcaster, the Jester's Bell necklace, and the fragment, we're going to have 100% increased cast speed. For our guns, like the rest of the meta right now, we're going to be using Monolith and Nebula. These are going to provide us with 25% more additive damage and some extra damage on top. And since we're going to be sitting in Havoc Form, the extra passive damage just go a long way. And just a side note for these two weapons, because we talk about them a lot, and yes, this is the new meta setup right now, but not because these two weapons are particularly strong by themselves. It's just that the meta has moved away from glass cannon, crit stacking, weak spot, ranged builds to let's just get out as many hits as possible, because more hits per second is effectively a multiplicative damage modifier, and additive damage is still really bad. So that's kind of where we're going to be using these in pretty much every build, because we just want to get as many hits as possible, and these two mods kind of work on their own, and you can just do whatever you're planning to do with these in the background. Now for the traits, we need to make sure we have Chakra and Amplitude, and then Footwork and Swiftness. Tickle Fingers counts as being an ADS, so we can't actually get really fast by stacking these two traits, and it lets us easily walk around for most of boss attacks. The rest of the traits are up to you, but I'd advise you go for Supreme Bulk, since you can be ultra heavy and have perfect use of Havoc Form, so you can still blink and such. So just go for Vigor, Fortify, Barkskin, Siphoner, and call it a day. There's really not much else to say about Havoc builds. You just activate your mods, turn on the lightning, and then just go Palpatine enemies to death. You'll cruise through all the zones, you'll kill all the bosses, ground to air, no problems. It's just a silly, no-brain kind of build now. I do kind of expect this to get nerfed though, because it's just too good for no effort. But anyway, we do have one more Havoc Form build to show you, and it's largely similar since obviously it's just based on Havoc Form. But the main difference here is that we're not using Tickle Fingers, we're going to be using the Blink instead. The Blink on Havoc Form is insanely strong, and unfortunately doing too much damage. See, what it's supposed to do is that when you blink, you deal damage to enemies where you were and where you end up. But with Amplitude now, these AoEs overlap, so you can easily hit the same enemy twice, which is not technically a bug, I guess, but it does effectively double your DPS. And you can dish out a lot of DPS with Blink Spam, like 6k, weak spots, just 6k flat over, Tickle Fingers 3.5k, 4k maybe. It's far superior at the cost of being just kind of really hard to see and play, and not really been able to deal with bosses that are in the air, but you can also just Tickle Finger them in that case. The only changes with this setup, actually compared to Tickle Fingers, is that you're going to be changing your neck and your relic fragment from cast speed to just crit and crit damage. So for the neck, you can use Whetstone if you want to toss a grenade at the boss, or you can use Nightweaver's Grudge and swap Braided Thorns for Atonement Fold. And then for the relic fragment, we're going to be trading cast speed for skill duration. So on this setup, special note here is that the blink is a dodge, so you can scale blink cast speed by increasing dodge speed. And there's really not too many ways to get that, unfortunately. The only really way I found out that was easy enough to sustain was the Ambit Ember consumable, which makes you noticeably faster with the blink and does help your DPS quite a lot. So make sure you're popping that green stuff with your Adrenaline for stagger resistance. Oh, and regarding the traits for this, I did change my traits a little bit as well for this setup. You're going to want to use Affliction if you're going to throw a grenade for the bleed, and you're also going to want Potency for the consumable duration, because we're going to need to be in bosses' faces all the time, like way more than Tickle Fingers, and you're probably going to get hit more often. So we're going to need stagger resistance for that, and make sure that it's on long enough. But that's about covering it. So again, activate your mods, turn on the lightning, and press dodge a bunch. So the bosses are going to have a hard time hitting you because you're just going to be blinking all over the place. And the iframes are kind of obscene with blink, so you're probably not going to get hit all that often, but you know, the chances are there. But if you do get hit, you're just going to leech it back and heal in no time. So yeah, Havoc Form is super busted. Probably going to get nerfed. Don't get attached to it, I'd say. But we don't know when the next patch is going to be, so have fun with it for now, I guess. But anyway, that's going to be all for me. Thank you all for watching. If you have any more questions or concerns, please let me know, or feel free to join the Discord in the description below and chat, whatever. But yeah, peace and good luck out there, hunters.